At the outset, I would, as always, like to offer my humble pranams at the lotus feet of our most beloved Bhagwan. Loving Sai Ram and greetings to all of you viewers and listeners from Prashanti Nilayam. This is my 11th talk, and before I get down to it, let me first respond to some of the comments I have received. I have received many, but I would like to respond to some of them today before I get started. Now, some viewers want this series to be a documentary. What do I mean by that? Well, they want my narrative should be accompanied by matching visuals. Now, this is a good idea, and in fact, we ourselves considered doing a documentary style series. In fact, when I first decided to do this series, I held detailed discussions with our boys who handle video matters. And it became clear during those discussions that presenting Swami's life as a narrated documentary would indeed be a great idea. But there was a problem. And what was the problem? Well, every episode would take at least 1 month of full-time work if we wanted to do a good and a serious job. Now, most people might be shocked by that number, but that is because they have little idea of how much work is involved in producing a decent documentary or docu, as they say in the professional world. I wonder how many of you saw the documentary entitled The Miracle of Pure Love that was shown as a part of my talk number 10, that is the previous one. Well, that documentary, which incidentally comes as a DVD along with the book that was released on April 24th, took us more than 1 month to prepare and make. When you do a documentary, it starts with a lot of background work that is inescapable. Then you have to have some kind of a rough script, and this script has to be constantly tweaked to match the shots one has. And in the case of Swami, you must remember, we don't have all the shots we would like to have. We have only what we have, and that accumulation is the result of arduous effort made over decades and decades. Okay, that is as far as the special Swami shots are concerned. Then we have to do special audio and video recording connected with the documentary. That has to be made. And after that, there is cutting, editing, adding music, syncing everything, balancing the sound, etc., etc., etc. So you see, there's a lot of work. We would very much like to produce a teleserial of that type relating to the life and Swami of Message. No question about that. But please remember, we are also a very, very small team out here. And whether you like it or not, we do have multiple responsibilities. Speaking for myself, you may not believe it, I work 7 days a week. There is no escape from it. And not all of my work is connected with just Radio Sai. There are many other duties that keep coming, and these duties keep me busy all the time. I am, for example, involved with teaching a major science course in the university. Now, that is advanced stuff, and it takes a lot of effort, believe me. Then there are people who drop in all the time, and I have to meet them all to keep them happy, especially because many of them come from great distances. So I just can't drive them away. It's not nice. It's not courteous. It's not polite. And in any case, I am there to serve them. So if they come to see me, how can I ask them to go away? I can't do that. Then there are also mails that listeners write. And I make it a point to answer almost all of them. These responses take time because people send in all sorts of questions. You just can't write replies in one or two terse words or brief sentences. It takes time to compose careful and meaningful replies so that the listeners are satisfied with the responses they get to the questions that they asked. That takes a lot of time. And then, believe it or not, there is administrative work, full work. It is there and it is demanding. So if I am tied up in various ways, others here also are. They are also not exempt from many of the things that I told you about. And like me, most of them also work 7 days a week. Now, the university and the hospital staff can take Sunday off. But ashram staff, they have no day off because the ashram works 7 days a week, all weeks of the year. And please remember, once again I would like to mention this, there are just half a dozen of us here doing Radio Sai and related work. Now, where Radio Sai is concerned, we have among other things to keep about 5 or 6 channels going round the clock 24/7. That calls for a lot of work. We have to arrange live broadcasts every day, audio broadcast, morning and evening. And besides that, we have to live web stream every time there is a program in Sai Kulwant Hall. And that happens quite frequently these days. And you know something? On working days, in the mornings, half of Radio Sai boys have to sit in for singing bhajans, playing harmonium, tabla, etc. because no one else is available. I am not trying to bellyache or offer excuses, but the fact is we are overstretched. Please bear with us. And by the way, most of our staff also have to earn their keep, which means making and selling products, and that too is work. I do not want to go into those matters right now, but one of these days I do intend to give you the full picture of how we run our show here. Let me make it very clear that I am not complaining or blaming any one of you out there. We here are there to serve you and serve you only. That is very clear. That is what we exist for, nothing else. However, this service is not a narrow spectrum, but a broadband spectrum. And it is because of that wide band, I had to spend almost a year working hard to get the book done on which this series is based. In other words, if I had not written that book, it would not have been easy for me to do this series. Please understand that. By the way, I have some good news for you. Many of you are insistent on having the book on Swami that was released recently. We are therefore doing all we can to bring out a low-cost edition that would be readily accessible to all pockets. Almost everything in the book that was released would be retained while cutting down the cost as much as possible. I am sorry I had to deviate from the main talk and talk about other things, but these are matters that had to be clarified, especially because of the many mails we have received. Let me now get down to the business of the day, which is to go to part 11 of my narration of the story of Swami. If you recall, I had come up to the point where Swami had moved from the Pathamandiram to the new Mandir in November 1950. At that time, this new Mandir was named Prashanti Nilayam by Swami. And as far as location is concerned, it was literally in the middle of nowhere. I shall pick up from that point. November 23, 1950 marked Swami's 25th birthday. And it was on that day that Prashanti Nilayam was formally inaugurated. On that day, there was a modest crowd and Swami did Abhishekam for the Shirdi Sai Baba statue inside the mandir. By performing the Abhishekam for the Shirdi Sai idol, Swami was declaring once again, or reiterating, I would say, that his current physical form was a continuation of the Shirdi avatar. In one other respect, and it was a major respect, things had changed from the Pathamandiram days. Now in the old mandir, people who came to see Swami could stay with him, at least some of them. The new mandir was built largely as a congregation hall with some modest attached facilities and a very small room for Swami to live in. There were no other frills. In fact, Swami's room upstairs was incredibly small and had to be reached by going up a small spiraling staircase. Earlier in the Pathamandiram, entire families would stay with Swami for 1 week, 2 weeks, and even a month. But now, in the changed scenario, there was nowhere where devotees could stay. Also, this mandir was at the time it was inaugurated quite far from the village, which itself had hardly any facilities worth the name for visitors. Now, Swami did not explain to visitors why he created a different scenario. However, there was a reason behind his action. In a sense, Swami was quietly giving shape to Sakamma's vision. Remember Sakamma? She was the lady who bought this plot of land and gave it to Swami so that a new mandir could be built. She bought the barren plot of land well away from the old mandir because she wanted the new mandir to be in a place where there was room for expansion. That expansion did slowly come, and quietly Swami was setting the stage for the day when the world would come to him. And it did happen. I have myself seen it. Swami had vaguely hinted at all this in his letter to Seshma Raju written in 1947. You might remember that I read out that letter earlier. But beyond that vague hint, he did not say much. It was not a word. However, one person did get a personal and advanced indication of the shape of things to come. And that person was Mother Ishwaramma. It is said that when the construction of the new mandir was nearing completion, Swami gave Ishwaramma a sort of a guided tour. Mother saw the big hall and she was taken aback. She asked Swami, "Do you think there would ever be a big crowd big enough to fill this hall?" Swami smiled and took Mother to the door that marked the entrance to the hall. You know, this door is right next to the interview room, if you know Prashanthi Nilayam. Standing there, Swami stretched his hand and pointed with his finger to a point where the Gopuram now is. He then said, "The day is not far off when crowds would be sitting right up to there." In today's language, what Swami was saying was, there would be crowd enough to fill a hall of the size of Sai Kulwant Hall. And many of us have not only seen the Sai Kulwant Hall being filled, but actually overflowing. Okay, the crowds did come later. But how was it in the beginning? Well, that's an interesting question. By 1950, Swami's reputation had spread sufficiently in the south for people to come from various parts of the south of the country. Everyone who came at that time faced two major impediments or difficulties. The first was the difficulty of reaching Puttaparthi. And then, having reached, there was the second difficulty, where to stay. As far as the second question was concerned, in the early days, people just stayed in the open, living, cooking, eating, and sleeping under trees. I have seen old film clips of such scenes. It was simply amazing. And by the way, that exactly is what divine magnetism is all about. It attracts people and they come unmindful of difficulties. For hundreds of years, people went on pilgrimages to far off places, including the Himalayas. I am talking about India. There were no planes and trains in those days. In fact, there were no roads also. The country was covered with forests, but these devotees of God went to what they believed were holy places. It might be Kashi, it might be Badrinath, it may be Rameshwaram, whatever it is, they went there. So in a sense, it was not surprising that people began to come to Swami once they heard about him, no matter what the difficulty. It was in the Indian tradition. Okay, these early pilgrims parked themselves wherever they could. But when it was time for darshan, all these people would head for the space in front of the mandir and sit there. There they would wait for darshan. And after darshan and bhajans were over, remember I told you there would be bhajans every day. After darshan and bhajans were over, these devotees would still hang around there. Why? Because sometime after bhajans were over and Swami had retired to his room upstairs, he would walk along the upstairs veranda from his room. Where was he going and for what? Well, he walked all the way to a room on the other end of the first floor of the mandir, the east end, you may call it. There, Mother Ishwarama would be waiting. What for? To serve lunch to Swami. Mother being mother, she would cook food in her house and bring it every day personally to serve Swami. And after Swami finished eating, he would walk back to his room. And during all that time, the large crowd gathered in the ground below would be patiently waiting to have one more glance or one more glimpse of Swami. That was the hunger people had, just to see him one more time. Let me now get back to the darshan routine. Today, everyone has heard of the word darshan. However, not many know what exactly that word means and how that practice of wanting to have darshan came into existence. So let me say a few words about it. Now, darshan is one of those words that is difficult to translate into European languages because of its close relationship to the local ethos, culture and tradition. Simply stated, darshan means being in the presence of a holy one or a deity installed in a temple. Even today, thousands of people in India go to various places just to be in a serene and sacred ambience for a while and feel close to their soul. Alternately, or in addition, devotees also seek realized souls so that they can be in their presence and experience inner calm. And if they are lucky, they could even speak to the Master. All this would not make much sense to Westerners or those who have embraced Western culture. There are many of them in the country today. Nevertheless, the fact remains that people everywhere yearn to commune with something beyond and transcendental in order to feel uplifted. Some seek to achieve this upliftment through solitude or communing with nature or even through meditation. Others withdraw into themselves to discover the creative aspects of the soul. And that is how some achieve eminence in art, literature, music, sculpture, painting, and so on. At the highest level, such self-discovery is achieved through intense meditation. And what is the outcome? Is it better art, better literature, and stuff like that? The outcome is sheer goodness. And this goodness finds expression through noble and virtuous acts as also compassionate service. Indeed, this is what spiritual journey is all about. Reaching out to that mysterious spirit within, which is symbolic of our primordial roots. Darshan is the simplest way of communing with one's own soul, with the help of a great master or God himself. Okay, so that is darshan. And once Swami moved into the new mandir, he introduced 3 regular routines every day. And those routines were daily darshans twice a day, morning and evening, and daily bhajans twice a day, morning and evening. What about the third item? The third practice was what later came to be simply called interviews. I shall now try to make a few brief comments about all these 3 famous daily routines, starting with darshan. As I told you earlier, having darshan is a timeless institution in India, and people generally went to a temple for this purpose. In a temple, one went inside and tried to get as close as possible to the idol to worship the deity of one's choice. In temples where the crowds are huge, people have to stand in a line for hours and hours in a queue and slowly move towards the sanctum sanctorum. And when they finally get there after hours of patient waiting, they usually get pushed out even before they get in. Unless, of course, the person is a VVVIP. Then the story is different. Now, all this is very frustrating, especially to pilgrims who have to travel from long distances and face many difficulties. But that was the way temple darshan has been from ages, at least in the famous shrines. Interestingly, despite all that, even to this day you see people flock in hundreds of thousands every day at the famous Tirupati temple, for example. Why do they put up with so many difficulties and yet go there? That's a different matter. In brief, it speaks of a strong inner hunger that lurks in every soul. I shall talk about that more later. Meanwhile, let me get back to Swami. As I said earlier, he came out for darshan twice a day, every day. And what was his style? He did not sit in one place and ask people to line past him. I mentioned that because many gurus did exactly that. And even today, many gurus do that. You have to just go past the Guruji, standing in a queue. Swami was different. He always went to the people instead of asking them to come to him. People became so used to it that they never even thought about it. Here is Swami coming to me. Did they think about it? No. In fact, they expected it and it became an entitlement. Why is Swami not coming to me? That was the way they began to feel. Thus one day many years ago, when everyone was taking darshan too much for granted and began to demand many things, Swami gently reminded them of how he gives darshan. We used to have in South India an old custom in which an idol from the temple would be taken out on a procession on festival days. And it will go through the streets of the village. What was the purpose of this procession? There was a purpose. As the procession went, it would stop every 10 meters or so that old people in the houses nearby can come out and offer worship. Swami implicitly said, it is in the nature of God to go to his devotees instead of making them come to him. And that exactly is what Swami did, literally, and to the very end. He went to the people. Let me now refer to one interesting thing that Swami used to do while giving darshan. Swami began accepting letters. Soon, giving letters to Swami became a big thing, and I have seen Swami being given letters in the most unlikeliest of places. Some of the veteran letter givers always had letters with them and kept following Swami wherever he went. And the moment they got a chance, they would slip in a letter. I once saw Swami in Hyderabad. This was many years ago. There is a compound wall in Shivam, which is Swami's residence in Hyderabad, and outside that wall is the road. I was there caught in the crowd in the road, somewhere in the distance. And what about Swami? He was giving darshan in Shivam premises. After completing that darshan, Swami came to the wall, climbed on a small step specially built for him, and leaned across the wall to take letters. And boy, was he flooded with letters. In 2003, Swami took a whole bunch of students with him to Kodaikanal in a chartered plane. He took me also in the same plane. Now, once the plane was airborne, Swami walked up and down to give darshan. The boys knew Swami would do this, and since Swami could not go anywhere, they managed to force all the letters they had ready into his hand. Swami had no choice, he had to accept it. Swami did a lot of things as he walked around giving darshan. I'm talking of regular darshan. Here and there, he would stop for a minute or so to listen to something that someone had to say. Many young mothers would ask Swami to bless their child. Swami would smile and touch the head of the kid. Other mothers would hold up a slate and ask Swami to initiate their child into learning. Swami would then stop, take the slate in his hand and write Om. This was a common routine. I vividly recall a beautiful photo of a young boy about 4 or so in blue shorts and a white shirt standing in front of Swami while Swami was writing Om on the slate. There was a big crowd of people watching and smiling, with some perhaps thinking, what a lucky kid. As days went on, people invented new routines to stop Swami as he moved while giving darshan. One standard trick was for a devotee to hold up a plate full of chocolates. It was supposedly the birthday of the devotee or his kid. Swami would stop, pick up a handful of chocolates and scatter it all around. Boy, what a scramble there was to pick up those chocolates as prasadam. Soon, people started having birthdays almost once a week, even as shopkeepers minted money selling special birthday packs of chocolates. I particularly remember Swami going through this routine day after day in the inner veranda just behind where Ganesha used to be. There was one Australian who positioned himself in what I would call the silly mid-off position, that's cricket jargon, and he was good at catching all the chocolates that came his way. And Australians are good cricketers, and every day he would have a big collection of chocolates. Swami knew very well that there was a lot of fake birthdays going around, but he always liked a bit of fun and sustained the make-believe for a while. And inevitably, one day, he put a stop to most of the established traditions. Old-timers would recall how he would cut down one routine after the other. In fact, he stopped giving even Pada Namaskar as a matter of routine. The old days, Pada Namaskar was a big deal, and he used to give a lot of it. About the only routine he kept up till the very end was accepting letters. Let me now come to this interview business. Every day during darshan, Baba would call out to some people and take them to a room on the ground floor of the mandir for an extended and personal chat. This was known as the interview, and soon it became an institution and was also eagerly sought. If you are hearing about the famous interview business for the first time, you would hardly understand what that one single word meant. As Swami went round, he would simply say go or signal in a particular direction. If you are new, you would wonder, go where and for what? Is Swami asking you to get out? I had that problem. He told me once go. I didn't know where to go. Fortunately, even as you're struggling with doubts of this nature, there would be people around who literally push you towards a small crowd that is happily making its way to the interview room. So you join the crowd. And you enter the interview room. After everyone has got in, Swami would make his entry and close the door. What happened after that? For that, you have to wait for the next episode, I'm afraid. Today, I would like to finish the present narrative at this interesting juncture. And before I sign off, I have a small announcement to make. Dear viewer, I know how much this series means to you. But then I am also getting on in years and I do not have the energy I once used to have. In other words, given my multiple commitments and the fact that I have to do a lot of preparation for each of these recordings, I will from now on do this once every 2 weeks. I apologize for decreasing the frequency, but I do hope you would bear with me, permit me to have this concession. I thank you all for being with me during this session, and I now take your kind leave. God bless you all, and Jai Sai Ram. And finally, as always, I dedicate this talk at the lotus feet of our most beloved Bhagavan as a token of my love and deepest reverence. Jai Sai Ram.